The Famous Five by Enid Blyton. Book 1. 5 on a Treasure Island. Chapter 14. Prisoners. George couldn't say a word. She just stood there staring at the pile of ingots, holding one in her hand. She could hardly believe that these strange brick-shaped things were really gold. Her heart thumped fast. What a wonderful, incredible discovery! Suddenly Tim began to bark loudly. He stood with his back to the children, his nose towards the door, and he barked like mad. "Shut up, Tim," said Julian. "What can you hear? Is it the others coming back?" He went to the door and yelled down the passage outside. "Dick, Anne, is it you? Come quickly, because we've found the ingots. We've found them. Quick, hurry." Tim stopped barking and began to growl. George looked puzzled. "What can be the matter with Tim?" she said. "He surely can't be growling at Dick and Anne." Then both children got a huge shock, for a man's voice came booming down the dark passage, making strange echoes all around. "Who is here? Who is down here?" George clutched Julian in fright. Tim went on growling, all the hairs on his neck standing up straight. "Be quiet, Tim," whispered George, snapping off a torch. But Tim would not be quiet. He went on growling as if he were a small thunderstorm. The children saw the beam of a powerful torchlight coming round the corner of the dungeon passage. Then the light picked them out, and the holder of the torch came to a surprised stop. "Well, well, well," said a voice. "Look who is here, 2 children in the dungeons of my castle." "What do you mean, your castle?" cried George. "Well, my dear little girl, it is my castle, because I am in the process of buying it," said the voice. Then another voice spoke more gruffly. "What are you doing down here? What did you mean when you shouted out Dick and Anne, and said you had found the ingots? What ingots?" "Don't answer," whispered Julian to George, but the echoes took his words and made them very loud in the passage. "Don't answer, don't answer." "Oh, so you won't answer," said the second man, and he stepped towards the children. Tim bared his teeth, but the man didn't seem at all frightened of him. The man went to the door and flashed his torch inside the dungeon. He gave a long whistle of surprise. "Jake, look here," he said. "You were right. The gold's here all right, and how easy to take away. All in ingots. This is the most amazing thing we've ever found." "This gold is mine," said George in a fury. "This island and the castle belong to my mum, and so does anything found here. This gold was brought here and stored by my great-great-great-grandfather before his ship got wrecked. It's not yours and never will be. As soon as I get back home, I'm going to tell my parents what we have found, and then you won't be able to buy the castle or the island. You were very clever, finding out from the map in the old box about the gold, but just not clever enough to beat us. We found it first." The men listened in silence to George's clear and angry voice. One of them laughed. "You're only a kid," he said. "You surely don't think you can keep us from getting our way? We are going to buy this island and everything in it, and we shall take the gold when the deeds are signed. And if by chance we can't buy the island, we'll take the gold just the same. It'd be easy enough to bring a ship here and transfer the ingots from here by boat to the ship. Don't worry, we shall get what we want all right." "You will not," said George, and he stepped out of the door. "I'm going straight home now, and I'll tell my dad exactly what you have said." "My dear little girl, you are not going home," said the first man, putting his hands on George's shoulders and forcing her back into the dungeon. "And by the way, unless you want me to shoot this unpleasant dog of yours, call him off, will you?" George saw to her horror that the man had a shining revolver in his hand. In the fright, she caught hold of Tim's collar and pulled him to her. "Be quiet, Tim," she said. "It's all right." But Tim knew that it wasn't all right. Something was very wrong. He went on growling fiercely. "Now listen to me," said the man after he had had a hurried talk with his companion. "If you are sensible, nothing unpleasant will happen to you. But if you want to be obstinate, you'll be very sorry. What we are going to do is this. We are going off in our motorboat, leaving you nicely locked up here, and we are going to get a ship and come back for the gold. There's no point buying the island now we know where the ingots are. And you are going to write a note to your friends above, telling them you have found the gold and they are to come down and see it, said the other man. Then we shall lock up all of you in this dungeon with the ingots to play with, leaving you food and drink till we come back. Here's a pencil. Write a note to Dick and Anne, whoever they are, and send your dog up with it. Come on. I won't, said George, her face furious. I won't. You can't make me do a thing like that. I won't get poor Dick and Anne down here to be made prisoners, and I won't let you have my gold just when I've discovered it. We'll shoot your dog if you don't do as you are told, said the first man suddenly. George's heart sank down, and she felt cold and terrified. No, no, she said in a low, desperate voice. Well, write the note then, said the man, offering her a pencil and paper. Go on, I'll tell you what to say. I can't, sobbed George. I don't want to get Dick and Anne down here to be made prisoners. All right, I'll shoot the dog then, said the man in a cold voice, and he aimed his revolver at poor Tim. George threw her arms round her dog and gave a scream. No, no, I'll write the note. Don't shoot Tim, don't shoot him. She took the paper and the pencil in a shaking hand and looked at the man. Write this, he ordered. Dear Dick and Anne, we've found the gold. Come on down at once and see it. Then sign your name, whatever it is. George wrote what the man had said. Then she signed her name, but instead of writing George, she put Georgina. She hoped that the others would know she would never sign herself that, and that would warn them that something was wrong. The man took the note and fastened it to Tim's collar. The dog growled all the time, but George kept telling him not to bite. Now tell him to go and find your friends, said the man. Find Dick and Anne, commanded George. Go on, Tim. Find Dick and Anne. Give them the note. Tim did not want to leave George, but there was something very urgent in her voice. He took one last look at his mistress, gave her hand a lick, and sped off down the passage. He knew the way now. Up the rocky steps he bounded, and into the open air. He stopped in the old yard, sniffing. Where were Dick and Anne? He smelled their footsteps and ran off, his nose to the ground. He soon found the two children out on the rocks. Dick was feeling better now and was sitting up. His cheek had almost stopped bleeding. Hey, he said in surprise when he saw Tim. Here's Timothy. Tim, why have you come to see us? Did you get tired of being underground in the dark? Look, Dick, he's got something twisted into his collar, said Anne, her sharp eyes seeing the paper there. It's a note. I expect it's from the others telling us to go down. Isn't Tim clever to bring it? Dick took the paper from Tim's collar. He undid it and read it. Dear Dick and Anne, he read out aloud. We have found the gold. Come on down at once and see it. Georgina. Ooh, said Anne, her eyes shining. They've found it, Dick. Are you well enough to come now? Let's hurry. But Dick did not get up from the rocks. He sat and stared at the note, puzzled. What's the matter? Said Anne impatiently. Well, don't you think it's funny that George should suddenly sign herself Georgina? Said Dick slowly. You know how she hates being a girl and having a girl's name? You know she'll never answer if anyone calls her Georgina, and yet in this note she signs herself by the name she hates. It seems a bit funny to me, almost as if it's a kind of warning that there's something wrong. Oh, don't be so silly, Dick, said Anne. What could be wrong? Come on. Anne, I'd like to pop over to that inlet of ours to make sure there's no one else on the island, said Dick. You stay here. But Anne didn't want to stay there alone. She ran round the coast with Dick, telling him all the time that she thought he was very silly. But when they came to that little harbour, they saw that there was another boat there, as well as their own. It was a motor boat. Someone else was on the island. Look, said Dick in a whisper, there is someone else here, and I bet it's the men who want to buy the island. I bet they've read that old map and know there's gold there. And they've found George and Julian and want to get us all together down in the dungeons so that they can keep us safe till they've stolen the gold. That's why they made George send us that note, but she signed it with a name she never uses to warn us. We have to think hard. What are we going to do?